What if I told you that your inability to stop looking at women isn't just about attraction? It's about something far deeper, something Carl Jung spent his entire life trying to help us understand. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most uncomfortable yet transformative topics in male psychology, the compulsive need to look at women, and what Carl Jung's revolutionary theories reveal about why we do it and how we can transcend it. Before we begin, I want to be clear. This isn't about shaming anyone. This isn't about denying natural attraction or pretending we're something we're not. This is about understanding the psychological mechanisms beneath our behavior and ultimately becoming more integrated, conscious human beings. Jung believed that every compulsion, every addiction, every behavior we can't seem to control is trying to tell us something about ourselves. And when it comes to the male gaze, when it comes to this constant, almost magnetic pull toward looking at women, Jung would say, you're not looking at them. You're looking for something in yourself. So let's explore this together. Let's go deep into Jungian psychology and discover what's really happening when we can't stop looking, and more importantly, what we can do about it. To understand why we compulsively look at women, we first need to understand one of Jung's most powerful concepts, the shadow. The shadow in Jungian psychology is the part of ourselves that we've rejected, denied, or repressed. It contains everything we don't want to admit about ourselves, our darker impulses, our forbidden desires, our shame, our weakness. But here's what most people don't understand. The shadow isn't just negative. It also contains tremendous creative energy, vitality, and power that we've locked away because we were taught it was unacceptable. When you can't stop looking at women, Jung would ask, what part of yourself are you projecting onto them? What quality, what energy, what aspect of your own psyche have you disowned and are now desperately seeking in the external world? For many men, the answer is their anima, their inner feminine. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, understand this fundamental principle. Whatever you're obsessively seeking outside yourself is actually something you've lost connection with inside yourself. The compulsive gaze isn't really about the women you're looking at. It's about the hole in your own psyche. It's about the parts of yourself you haven't integrated. And until you face that shadow, until you reclaim those lost parts of yourself, you'll remain trapped in this cycle of seeking, looking, never satisfied, always hungry for something you can't quite name. Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The compulsive need to look at women isn't fate. It's unconsciousness, and that means it can be transformed. Now, we come to perhaps Jung's most revolutionary concept for understanding male psychology, the anima. The anima is the unconscious feminine aspect of a man's psyche. Every man, Jung believed, carries within himself an inner woman, a feminine energy that represents qualities like emotional depth, intuition, creativity, receptivity, and connection. In a healthy psyche, a man has a relationship with his anima. He's integrated these feminine qualities into his conscious personality. But in our culture, most men are taught to reject anything feminine. We're told that real men don't cry, don't feel, don't need connection. We're taught to be hard, logical, independent, always in control. And so the anima gets pushed into the unconscious. It becomes part of the shadow. And here's where it gets interesting. When a man hasn't integrated his anima, when he's rejected his own inner feminine, he becomes completely dependent on external women to feel whole. He projects his anima onto them. He sees in them all the qualities he's denied in himself, the emotional depth, the beauty, the mystery, the life force. This is why the looking becomes compulsive. You're not just attracted to women. You're literally trying to connect with a part of yourself that you've lost. Every time you look, you're unconsciously hoping to feel whole, to feel complete, to touch that feminine energy that you've exiled from your own being. Jung believed that a man who hasn't integrated his anima will always be psychologically incomplete. He'll seek completion through women, through relationships, through sex, through the endless consumption of feminine images. But no external woman can ever give him what he needs, because what he needs is internal. It's his own anima, waiting to be acknowledged, accepted, and integrated. The irony is profound. The more desperately you look at women, the more you prove that you haven't found the feminine within yourself. You're seeking outside what can only be found inside. Let's go deeper into this mechanism of projection, because understanding it is absolutely crucial. Projection is one of the most powerful and least understood forces in human psychology. It's the process by which we take something that exists in our own psyche, a quality, a desire, a fear, and unconsciously see it in the external world, in other people. When you look at a woman and feel that magnetic pull, that sense of fascination, that feeling that she has something you need, that's projection. You're seeing your own anima reflected back at you. You're encountering a part of yourself that you don't recognize as yourself. And this is why the desire is never satisfied. You might look at one woman, then another, then another. You might consume endless images, endless fantasy. But nothing ever quite scratches the itch, does it? Because you're not actually wanting those women. You're wanting yourself, the lost, rejected, exiled parts of your own psyche. Jung wrote extensively about how projection creates a kind of psychological bondage. When you project your anima onto women, you give them tremendous power over you. They become the source of your wholeness, your happiness, your sense of vitality. You become dependent on their presence, their approval, their attention. You become, in a sense, addicted. And this is the trap. The more you look, the more you reinforce the projection. The more you reinforce the projection, the more disconnected you become from your own inner feminine. The more disconnected you become, the more desperately you need to look. It's a vicious cycle that can dominate a man's entire life. But here's the good news. Once you understand projection, you can begin to reclaim it. You can start to ask yourself, what am I seeing in her that actually exists in me? What quality am I attributing to her that I need to develop in myself? This is the beginning of integration. This is the path to freedom. Now, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because Jung understood that individual psychology doesn't exist in a vacuum. We're all swimming in what he called the collective unconscious, the shared psychological inheritance of humanity, filled with archetypes, symbols, and patterns that shape our behavior in ways we rarely recognize. In our modern culture, the feminine has been commodified, objectified, and turned into a product for consumption. Everywhere you look, advertising, social media, entertainment, you're bombarded with images designed to trigger your anima projection. The entire system is engineered to keep you in a state of desire, always looking, never satisfied. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is business. Your attention is valuable. Your desire is profitable. And so the culture creates an endless stream of feminine imagery to capture your gaze and keep you coming back for more. But Jung would say this cultural phenomenon is also reflecting something deeper, a collective crisis of integration. We live in a civilization that has become radically unbalanced, that has elevated masculine qualities like logic, competition, and control, while devaluing feminine qualities like intuition, collaboration, and receptivity. The result is a society full of men who are psychologically fragmented, desperately seeking in external women what they've been culturally conditioned to reject in themselves. And a society full of women who are reduced to objects, expected to carry the projected anima for millions of unconscious men. This is everyone's problem. This is everyone's work. But it starts with you. It starts with individual men waking up to the pattern, recognizing the projection, and doing the difficult work of integration. You're not just struggling with your own psychology, You're struggling with thousands of years of cultural conditioning. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. In fact, understanding this makes you more powerful because you can see the game that's being played and choose not to play it anymore. So, how do we actually do this work? How do we integrate the anima and break free from compulsive looking? Jung's answer was individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated person by bringing unconscious contents into consciousness and learning to relate to them consciously rather than being unconsciously driven by them. For men struggling with the compulsive male gaze, this means several concrete practices. First, cultivate awareness. Start noticing when you're looking. Don't judge it. Don't shame yourself. Just notice. Where does your attention go? What triggers the impulse? What are you feeling in those moments? Awareness is the first step to consciousness, and consciousness is the first step to freedom. Second, practice active imagination. This was one of Jung's primary therapeutic techniques. It involves dialoguing with the unconscious, creating a relationship with your anima. You might imagine her as a figure in meditation and actually have a conversation with her. Ask her what she needs. Ask her what she represents. Listen to what emerges. This might feel strange at first, but it's incredibly powerful for making the unconscious conscious. Third, develop your feminine qualities consciously. If your anima represents emotional depth, start cultivating emotional awareness. If she represents creativity, start creating. If she represents connection, start building genuine relationships. Whatever qualities you've been projecting onto women, start embodying them yourself. Fourth, practice sublimation. Jung believed that raw, instinctual energy could be transformed into higher creative and spiritual pursuits. Your sexual energy, your desire, these are tremendously powerful forces. Instead of letting them leak out through compulsive looking, channel them into art, into work, into service, into spiritual practice. This isn't repression, it's transformation. Fifth, do shadow work. Explore what you're ashamed of. What do you judge in yourself? What have you been told isn't acceptable? Often, our compulsive behaviors are attempts to escape uncomfortable feelings or parts of ourselves. If you're willing to face the shadow, you take away its power to control you. Sixth, seek real relationship, not relationship based on projection and fantasy, but relationship where you see the other person as a real human being separate from you, with their own inner life. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold the tension between opposites, to relate to what's genuinely other rather than just seeing your own reflection. This work isn't easy. It requires honesty, courage, and sustained effort. But it's the only way to genuine freedom and psychological maturity. What does a man look like on the other side of this work? What happens when you've integrated your anima, when you've reclaimed your projected feminine, when you're no longer compulsively driven by unconscious forces? Jung would say you become more whole. You become more yourself. You're no longer fragmented, no longer desperately seeking outside yourself what you need inside yourself. You can appreciate beauty without being enslaved by it. You can feel attraction without being compelled to act on it. You can relate to women as real people rather than as objects or projections. You have access to your emotions, your intuition, your creativity. Not because you're becoming less masculine, but because you're becoming more complete. This is what Jung called the individuated person, someone who has integrated their opposites, who has brought consciousness to what was unconscious, who is no longer unconsciously driven by archetypes and projections, but can relate to them with awareness and choice. And here's the paradox. When you stop desperately seeking the feminine outside yourself, when you've integrated your anima, you actually become more attractive to women, not in a manipulative way, not as a technique, but because you're whole. You're complete in yourself. You're not needy, not desperate, not projecting. You can meet another person as an equal, as a sovereign being relating to another sovereign being. The transformed masculine doesn't need to stop looking at women. He chooses when and how to direct his attention consciously, with awareness and respect. His gaze isn't compulsive, it's intentional, and that makes all the difference. This is the man Jung believed we could become. Not perfect, not superhuman, but conscious, integrated, and free. So let's bring this all together. Your compulsive need to look at women isn't a moral failing. It's not proof that you're weak or bad or irredeemable. It's a symptom. It's your psyche trying to tell you something. It's showing you that there's work to be done, integration to be achieved, consciousness to be gained. Jung's message is ultimately one of hope. Yes, you're driven by forces you don't understand. Yes, you're caught in patterns you didn't choose. But you can wake up. You can do the work. You can become conscious. And when you do, you free not just yourself, but you contribute to the healing of the collective. Every man who integrates his anima, who stops projecting and starts relating, who becomes conscious of his shadow and chooses integration over compulsion, that man is doing revolutionary work. He's breaking thousands of years of conditioning. He's healing the split between masculine and feminine, inner and outer, conscious and unconscious. This is the path Jung laid out for us. It's not easy. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It requires surrendering the fantasy of finding completion through external sources. It requires growing up psychologically and taking responsibility for our own wholeness. But the reward is freedom. Real freedom. Not freedom from desire, but freedom from compulsion. Not freedom from attraction, but freedom from addiction. Not freedom from the feminine, but freedom through integrating the feminine within yourself. So I'll leave you with Jung's words. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Stop looking at women in that compulsive, unconscious way. Start looking at yourself. Start doing the work of integration. Start becoming whole. The journey begins now. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Share it with someone who might benefit from hearing this message. And drop a comment below. I'd love to hear about your own journey with these ideas, your struggles, your insights, your questions. Remember, awareness is the first step. You've taken it today. Where you go from here is up to you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.